This episode contains brief references to a historical case of police violence and discussion of the challenges of growing up as a trans person. Please take care while watching or listening. Take one.
Welcome to Platform F. We are here with Jace, Mr. Bear, South Australia 2024.
Yes, the artist formerly known as Mr. Bear.
2024.
Yeah.
That's going to stay,
Yes.
you know?
I will always have been Mr. Bear South Australia 2024.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you will be always.
always.
Yeah. Jace, thank you so much for talking to me, talking to us. Maddie's here with us today.
Thank you for having me. Absolutely.
Let's start with your recent step down.
Yes. So one kind of fun little difference when it comes to the Mr. Bear essay title is when I signed my contract, I was also informed that my requirement would be to host my competition for my SASH child. So that was a fun experience. I made my way back down to Ghana country, Adelaide, and not only was there as the outgoing title holder, but as the host. So up on stage by myself, and anyone that knows me knows that I love to be the center of attention. So it wasn't too difficult. But just getting a moment to kind of connect back with the Bearmen of Adelaide and kind of share space with them and laugh and cry, and also get to give the two competitors every helping hand I could to kind of exhibit themselves to the community. It also meant that I didn't kind of have like a formalized step down speech like a lot of people do, because I was like, you guys have listened to me for the last 3 hours. I don't think I need to take up 10 minutes of your time talking about what I've done. And instead it was just a moment of kind of sitting with the community and going, I'm just so thankful that I got to do this with you all and that I love you all. And then, giving birth live on stage with my SASH son was a really special moment, and just kind of to stand alongside community members. And also it was really lovely. We had Billy, Mr. Vic Bear, come down to the comp, and we also had Jono, Harbour City Bear, come down. And I think oftentimes people forget about Adelaide. So it was really nice to have kind of a bit of a spotlight and see some people come from interstate to support and connect.
So last year when you won the title, that also marks you being the first trans and First Nations person to win that title. How was that like?
It was a big experience. So prior to 2024, there has not been a trans man win a Mr. Bear title anywhere across Australia. And I knew going into the competition that was the case, and obviously I was hopeful. I was like, oh, maybe I'll get to be, the first Mr. Bear to be trans. And then good old Jeb came in a week prior and won Mr. Bear Perth. So he is the first trans man to ever win a state bear title, and I am the second, but I am the first trans man to win Mr. Bear SA. And also, quite unfortunately, the only Aboriginal person to win a state-based bear title in what is over 25 years of history. Unfortunately, not an uncommon story. Aboriginal people make up, depending on the statistic you read, about 4 to 5% of the population. Even though we are the first peoples, we've been here for over 120,000 years. We are often underrepresented, and I think it's something that a lot of queer spaces can take a moment to look at, see how many Aboriginal people are in the room with you, see how many Aboriginal people are, showing up, because I know from firsthand experience that as blackfellas, we are much less likely to go to a space if you don't want to be the first one. As much as it is an honour to represent Aboriginal people, and particularly my community of the Wotjabluk and Gamilaroi people, like that's so special. I know that I stand on the shoulders of giants, and I wouldn't be who I was if not for my ancestors. It is really hard to be that only voice, and that goes for any marginalisation. But I think particularly for Aboriginal people in a country post colonisation where we are supposed to be the caretakers and the custodians, and this is our land, and we have not foregone sovereignty. to never be present in spaces or to walk into so many spaces and be like, I genuinely don't know if there's another black fella here. I don't know if I'm alone in this fight, is really difficult. And I've seen that both on Ghana country and here in Naarm as well. Like it's not an issue specific to one part of Australia. It's very, very broad. I think also the level that people choose to talk about their experiences as an Aboriginal person also varies as well. And that's why, I'll never walk into a space without being like, hi, I'm Jace, I'm a trans man and I'm Aboriginal. And it's not some sense of like, I want to make a big deal about it, but it's that I don't want my Aboriginality or my transness to be kind of passed over or brushed over, especially as someone who is white passing and especially as someone who is cis passing as well. I have to put in that extra effort. And if I don't do that, someone is more than happy to just see me as just another cis white guy. So I choose to do that in order to ensure that my true self is put forward and also to ensure that other black fellas and other trans people know that there's another one of us, in those spaces.
And we've seen other First Nation title holders emerging right now, and there's a lot of people of color coming into the title holder space as well. I hope that it will be an inspiration for a lot of other people to come forward and be on a stage and be on a different space as well. Do you feel the same?
Absolutely. I think that, the first step becomes much less scary if you're just walking in the footsteps of someone else. And in saying that, yes, I'm the first person on paper to do this, not the first to be in these spaces and to do these things. There are many queer black fellas back home that I knew attended bears well before I did. Not all of them have chosen to stay around, and that's okay. But they took those steps first. They did those things first. And the same goes for trans people. While yes, Jeb and I were the first trans men to win, trans men have competed at different levels in these competitions many times. Not taken home the crown, but if they didn't do that and they didn't face the backlash they did in those experiences, then Jeb and I wouldn't know where we stood today. Especially when it comes to laying down the groundwork, because winning a title is a representation of how the community feels about you and how they feel about your ability to represent them and honor them. And for that to be done, these spaces need to know that we exist and they have to get to know us and accept us. And if it wasn't for the trans men and people of color that came before, then they opened the door that then I could walk through.
There's one thing that I think differently to what you said. Just if you are going for a title and if it's judged by judges and if you win, that's great. But I don't think that's a representation of the community's preference all the time, if that makes sense. Because it's a competition. You can be a great community representation. You might be doing so many things, but if you're not actually performing well on a competition, if you're nervous or I don't know, something, and there might be someone else who's actually like, be good in interviews and on stage, that person might win.
Very true.
Winning a competition is not a representation of who you are or what the community think of you as a person or as a member of that community.
It's what they think about you on the night.
It's just but people or the judges, that's what they think based on the criteria given, and it's not a representation of your entire life or what you have done or what you're going to do in life. Because there's a lot of people here who doesn't have any titles and doing more than what we've done.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So
no, do you know what? You're absolutely right. I think that more so, and I guess it's something that's more specific to my experience, but like, I think very much so if I had not put in the work with the other community members to kind of connect with them, that I would not have won. The judging panel, yes, is in that moment, is of that night. But for us in Adelaide, it is very much closely tied to the community that shows up every fortnight. And they are talking about who's competing, and they are talking about, who they like and don't like, even outside of the judging panel.
Yeah.
So I think that like it would very much be a thing of like, actually Jace hasn't done anything. And that would have carried through when I'd gotten on stage had I not. But absolutely, I've seen competitions in many different areas and in different places. They all operate differently. And, it was actually a question that was asked during my competition and the competition that I hosted this year, that was asked in the second round. And it was, what is the difference between winning a title and being a title holder? And I think that's exactly it. Winning a title is that moment that you're on stage, that you put on a great show, you entertain people enough that they're like, oh, this guy seems cool. And then actually being a title holder is how you continue to represent your community, how you show up for your community, how you also show up for other people as a kind of conduit of your community experience. And I think that can be really, really important, and something that often gets overlooked when people are talking about why they want a title or why they choose to run for a title, is that moment should continue the whole time. That whole time you've got to be switched on. Like, I stopped doing drag while I was Mr. Bear because I wanted to focus on this. I was like, my stage persona is not who won Mr. Bear SA. I did that, so I need to commit to that, and I need to put that effort and that energy in. And that's what's important about being a title holder, is how you show up.
Jace, how was growing up in South Australia?
It was an interesting time. I have talked a lot openly about my different experiences in South Australia. So I was born at the Laird Hospital. Shout out to Elizabeth, which is very much considered like the bogan capital of South Australia, and Adelaide specifically. Was in housing commissions growing up. And then we had an opportunity where, like, a family member of my dad's had bought a house out in rural South Australia and was like, look, we know that you don't like living in this area. It was not a very safe place when my younger sister was born. So we moved out to the country. So about 2 hours out of Adelaide, to a place called Moonta. Beautiful, gorgeous, like, beach town, heritage, like these beautiful old miners' cottages. It was like the Cornish migration capital of South Australia, copper mines. It's a beautiful place. A little bit backwards. And I say that with love in my heart. But I came out at 15 in a time where we were coming up to the marriage plebiscite, and the Australian Christian Lobby, all their main ads, like, promoting "Don't vote yes" on the plebiscite, were like, because then they'll turn your children transgender. And people only vaguely knew what the term transgender meant when I first came out. So, like, there was a little bit of acceptance because, I was the first time, they were hearing it. I'd been in the community there for 10 years. My dad was a pillar of the community. My mum was a social worker. Like, we were very much established. So people weren't that backwards to begin with. But absolutely, once those television ads started coming out, I remember just such a cultural shift. At the time I was going to a Christian school. I went through conversion therapy there, which is a whole nother story that you can read about online. It just says Jace Reh conversion therapy, it'll come up. But I always felt a little bit outcasted. A lot of people in that community have been there for, like, generations upon generations, and we just, moved in and tried to make our way through. Kind of all of my family are very big, loud personalities and voices, so people had a hard time getting rid of us. That didn't change the fact that I still loved where I was, and also being able to connect with other blackfellas in that space. So there are still a lot of communities and missions in that area, Point Pierce and all those kind of things. So that's Narungga country. I love Narungga people. They're incredible. And getting to connect with so many blackfellas, even as a white passing person, was such a special opportunity that I will never be able to say how thankful I am for blackfellas that I connected with there. Very typical country kid experience of being queer, and especially being trans as well, in a time where it was very different than it is now. I experienced my fair share of, slurs down the street and, at school and those kind of things. I had to exit mainstream schooling and do kind of like a mixed model in order to be able to just kind of not be bullied in classrooms and things like that. But at the end of the day, I got through it, and I used a lot of that in order to kind of build my advocacy platforms that I do now. I really feel like I learned so much by being, like, the only queer in the village, very much so. And without that, I don't think I'd be as confident and kind of front facing as I am now.
You are very confident. You are very much connected with people here in Melbourne as well. How did that start? I'm curious to know. Was it easy to connect with people at a very young age, or find your people? How did that happen?
Well, honestly, other than blackfellas, when I was living in the country, I didn't have a lot of people around me. Some of my only friends from school are blackfellas that I connected with, usually in the alternative learning programs. I went to university in Canberra when I was like 17. Was there for a few years, kind of bounced around. I could not find my like space. I moved back to Adelaide when I was like 20, right before COVID kind of slapped everyone in the face. Um, and again, I think because I didn't know who I was, I couldn't quite find a group of people that helped me or supported me. And I made a really great lifelong friend that I live with, Theo, who is in community with me all the time. And he very much is like a polar opposite in terms of like personality, but is much more knowledgeable and also knows himself a lot better than I do. And a lot of the reason why I ended up in like the fetish scene and the kink and communities was because he was really interested in it. And he was like, can we go and do these things? And I was like, okay, I'll just go. And because I am so quick to just kind of talk and chat to people, I was like, actually, these people are kind of like, they're my people. And it was a very kind of quick speed up from that of like, okay, we attended one event. We went to the Mr. Bear SA 2023. And I was like, oh, these people are really cool. And then just from there, we started showing up at everything. I started working in like the mental health peer space around 3.5 years ago. And I was working for an organization that like was very connected with Melbourne. And so they sent me over to go and do a few things, and I would bring Theo with me. And the second we started going here, we were like, wow, this is where we need to be. So we very much just were like, okay, what's the plan? How do we do this? And over the space of 2 years, I kept working in the peer mental health space. I knew that Victoria had a much better kind of peer infrastructure when it came to mental health. So I was like, okay, it's not going to be hard to find work. We waited about 2 years of just like coming here once a month, finding whatever cheap way we could to do it. There's an $18 concession bus that goes from Adelaide to Melbourne.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah. It's a uncomfortable journey, and it takes 10 hours, but it's great for cost effectiveness. And then, we would stay with friends, or we'd get Airbnbs, and we'd just, hobble our way through it. And from that point, it was like, okay, and now I think we're ready. Unfortunately, there were some funding changes at my old job, and they were going to get rid of one of the two peer workers that they had. The other peer worker was an older guy who had kids, and like they were young and still in school. And he was like, I can't just up and find another job. And I was like, well, I can. So that's part of the reason why I left during my title year, was that I was like, I need to work. There's nothing going in South Australia right now. I'm choosing to forego this job so that way someone else can, keep staying there. And then I found work over in Victoria, and because we'd established such like a connected community, it felt easy enough to do.
Was it easy to establish? I mean, you're still new to Victoria and Melbourne, but was it easy to connect with people and find your people here because you're already coming, with the title and you already know people, you've already been here many times. Do you find it easier now to live here and work here?
Absolutely. If we just come in blind, not knowing anyone, not knowing spaces, not being to events, it would have been a lot harder to feel like we were connected. I will say that something that I noticed, and it kind of created a bit of growing pains in the move, was people here in Naarm. I don't know if you all know, you all have seasonal depression. When it's winter, you guys don't go outside. Literally, we kept being like, hi guys, we've just moved, want to hang out? And everyone was like, no, it's too cold. So that was really difficult, because I think coming from South Australia, being like, okay, we're going to Melbourne in order to have more community, more events, more connection, and then getting people to get out of the house was really hard. No one wanted to do it. So then it was like, well, now we just feel more isolated. And especially, when you come to visit, people are very much like, oh my God, you're only here for a couple of days, we have to make time. And then you move, and then people are like, oh, it matters this. And I think that that's one thing that I look at in the difference between like the South Australian community and the Victorian community, is that in South Australia, we are so proactive in catching up with people, because there aren't events that you can see people at every week. You know, there isn't these big times where you're all catching up. You can't just head down to the pub and you know that all of your friends are going to be there, because people in Adelaide there's less queer spaces to hang out, so therefore people are a lot more proactive. Whereas in Melbourne, people kind of sometimes, I think a little bit, take for granted how connected they get to be with other people. And yeah, it was really hard to get people out of the house. I feel like as we're coming into the warmer seasons, it's certainly a little bit easier, but
I find it challenging to go out during winter times. Partly because I'm not used to this weather, even though I live here now for last 5 years. It's not for a long time, just 5 years. I used to live in tropical places, so you know, just it's warm all the time. It's difficult in winter, so I've accepted now. I need someone to push me to go. So I think what you're doing is good, like, you know, pushing people to, like, you know, go out of their comfort zone. But also something you said earlier about you being the talkative person, and then you would just go with someone who's maybe not that talkative, but then you give them a safe space to go and explore things by being there. I find it really helpful for most of the people and me. Sometimes if I'm going to a new place, maybe not now because I know a lot of people now, that's a different thing. But a few years ago when I started exploring venues or, you know, events, it was really hard. But then I always had someone who was more outgoing or talkative than me, so I could tag along. But then when I'm there, I don't have any problems.
Yes.
But just to get to that place was really hard. Chase, you've lived in different places and now you live in Melbourne. You had access to different communities, you had different challenges, you met new people. For someone who's looking for their community, what sort of advice do you have?
I always kind of take that question in like a two-parter, because I think as the person that's the big personality that doesn't have a hard time doing those things, I think that it is the responsibility of other people like myself to do more to not get stuck in routine, and not only talk to your mates when you're at these events, or, you know, that if you see someone that's like not feeling, you know, they're kind of off to the edge, or you think they might be a little bit uncomfortable, or, you know, you haven't seen them around before, go up and do something, because they're going to find it really, really hard too. And I think especially coming from like a mental health background, where I'm seeing these people, I'm having these conversations in private where I know that they're really struggling with these situations, that what they would really benefit from is someone that is willing to just kind of poke them out of their shell a little bit. And I think that we have a responsibility as people that don't have as much difficulty with it to kind of do that and create those spaces for other people. And I think it's really important. I think we can all fall into routine where we're like, oh, but I'm just here to meet with my mates. I'm just here to do this thing for me. And I think the more that we can try and show new people that step in that it doesn't have to be so insular, that it can be, you know, anyone can join at any time, then it's going to be a lot easier for those people to choose to engage. So I think on the other side of that coin, it is about like finding your niche. And I think that is really important. Find the thing that you're interested about, and then do something to kind of portray that that's what you want to talk about, and people will engage you, you know? And I think that it's one of the reasons why I really like Hanky Code, which sounds so silly. But I think it's a really great opportunity to talk to people. If I see someone wearing like a cowboy hat and chaps, I'll be like, oh, do you know what color in the Hanky Code cowboy is? And most of the time they say no. And then they've got to talk about the hanky code. And then we talk about rust and, you know, all these kind of things. And I think when you choose to wear certain items of clothing and different things that will strike up a conversation, it's going to make it a lot easier. And then you're able to kind of be in your comfort zone because you're talking about something that you care about really deeply. And then, you know, you go from there. People will be like, oh, what do you do for work? How long have you been here? What brought you here tonight? What are you drinking? And I think a lot of those kind of almost what feel like silly chit chat conversation make it really easy to connect, because you let down your guard and then you're showing more about yourself and you're talking more confidently. And that can really make a difference in connecting.
I still remember the first times when people made me comfortable in different spaces, you know. So sometimes when you do something like that little to someone else, they will remember that for their entire lifetime.
Absolutely.
That's going to make a major impact.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had this conversation in one of the previous interviews as well. If for them to wear something, you know, kinky or like, you know, whatever the things that you like and go to an event, that's a major step. So appreciate it. You know, they've taken the step and make them comfortable. that gives us an opportunity to take a step beyond our personal levels,
Mm-hmm.
because most of the time, like you said, it's very easy to connect with just five people that we know and have a drink and go home. Yes, do that. That's fine. But then if you think of the community, us as a community, us as people who are into certain things and try to connect with each other, we need to welcome people. We need to make sure that new people are welcomed and that they feel safer and comfortable to come back. And then that way the community will grow, because individuals can always step out and, like, we will die one day and disappear, right?
Yeah.
But as a community, we will grow and we will still be here in 100 years' time.
Absolutely. And I especially think, when we move away from like the heteronormative standards of like, you get married, you have a child, you pass on your knowledge and your experiences to your child, and then they're going to pass it down to their child. As queer people, we don't always have that as an option. So being able to connect with new people in community and continue to grow. And I think especially when it comes to like age divides, that's a really big thing that I'm like, we cannot keep doing this. I want to hear the stories from old gay men that have been around for like 50 years, that have lived lives that I could never possibly imagine. If I don't listen to their story and I don't get to be the one that then talks about it later, that story then dies with them. That's why heritage pieces in leather are so important. Like, I don't consider myself a leather man, but I love and appreciate leather history and leather culture, because it is such a straightforward way that people have been able to pass down their stories. The San Francisco AIDS quilts and the memorial quilts that have been passed around for generations. It's a really beautiful piece that's held by by SAMESH, the South Australian Mobilisation of Empowerment and Sexual Health. They hold a quilt square that represents a leather man, and on it is his cap, his cock ring, and his favourite hanky, and it's the original pieces, and they're sewn into this quilt square with photos of him. And it's like, those pieces are so important. And if he had not had someone that he shared those with, we wouldn't still have them. And I never, ever want someone to feel like, young or old, they don't have someone to share their history with, because we could all die at any point.
Yes.
And if you've not shared your story, your voice then gets lost.
Yeah.
So that's why we need to constantly, that's why I am such an open person. That's why I'm not afraid to talk about things that like other people might be like, wow, what a story. Because I'm like, but if I don't tell it and someone else doesn't get to hear it, then I'm not seen and I'm not carried on. And I think we all have the right to experience that.
Yeah.
That's why I think that connection is so important.
We often think of legacy, right? Sometimes we think of legacy as this massive thing we have to do. But I think personally, legacy is the relationship you build and pass, and the memories you create and the stories you share. Even though they feel like small, the impact can be bigger. Yeah, I reflect on these things, what you're saying as well, most of the time. As queer people, and when we grow older, our lives are going to be very different to some of the people at our ages. But the memories and the stories we share and the relationships we nurture will live through other people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Jace, when you think of this community that you have around you and your people, what three things comes to mind?
One of the big things for me is expectations, which sounds worse than it is, but it is more about this idea. And I've talked to many people about this, which is, a lot of people look at South Australia and Adelaide and the Bears as this like kind of insular group that, is mostly older, and they're not into anything newfangled, and they're not diverse, and they're not accepting. And part of the reason why I chose to run for my title, and why I'm still, very much proud to be a member of the Bearmen of Adelaide, is because that's not what they are. People's expectations of them, they absolutely break every day. When I went back home, I got to connect with so many of them again, and just kind of holding space with them, of people that, stereotypes and expectations say wouldn't have any interest in connecting with me, but they do. And I love connecting with them. So I always feel like, we shatter expectations in South Australia. People always say that South Australians are more nice, and we are. But they think that because we're so we're a backwards town and we're quiet. So like, obviously people aren't going to be big personalities and forthcoming. But absolutely, in Adelaide, you've got to be. You've got no other choice. So yeah, shattering expectations is a big one. I think mindful is also a big one. a lot of South Australians have lived through some really trying times. We were the first state in in Australia to decriminalise homosexuality. We just reached our 50-year anniversary. Devastating that it was only 50 years ago. That all came around from the murder of a law professor at the Adelaide University. He was killed by police on the River Torrens, which was like a known cruising area. After his very notable death, the law school came together and they petitioned the parliament, and then we had homosexuality decriminalisation. But anytime I've talked to other South Australians about that, their response is always, "But so many people died before." Dr. Ian Duncan was a brilliant person, and his work will never be forgotten, and his death marked such a change. But there were so many people in poverty, queer people who were black and brown, queer people who didn't have the backing that Dr. Ian Duncan did, that were murdered by police in the same area many, many years before. And every time I have the conversation about it, South Australians will acknowledge it because they don't want to forget those voices. They're mindful of those experiences. They acknowledge where it came from. And I feel like we are a very compassionate people, and not everyone is, obviously. There's always bad apples. But the fact that we can have those conversations with true honesty and acknowledgement and reflection is so important. And that's why I love that community. Wild, I think. I think South Australians, due to our terrible sex work laws and the fact that we can't have, sex on premises parties, the second that South Australians get given an opportunity, they go wild. They are party hard. They know what they're doing. They are the life of the party. If you ever see a South Australian at a party, spend the rest of the night with them because they're gonna show you a good time.
Yes, thank you so much for this conversation. Looking forward to see what you're doing after your title year and in Melbourne. You are a very young title holder compared to me, and I'm curious to see how the future is going to be for you, because you have a stronger voice and you are very visible in a lot of spaces. For the short time I've gotten to know you, and I have noticed that. I think it's a great thing. People need to be visible and get noticed for what they stand for, and I can see how you connect with everyone as well. So I can't wait to see what future brings, and how you're going to find your grounds in Melbourne and establish yourself, or wherever. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, right? Wherever. I haven't been here for a long time. I've been in different places. So, we all move, but the connections we make, the way we build relationships, they're pretty universal. So,
yeah.
wish you all the best for everything.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right.